Welcome back to SOCA TV, Trinidad and Tobago. This is your boy Lalan Ocho, aka Cariboy, and
this is Tristan of the Trinidad and Tobago Performing Arts Network.
Right. So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, what we talking about? There's a lot of things going on in the world right now.
Indeed.
A lot of things going on in the world, a lot of things to talk about. And it brings us to our topic of this evening.
Theatre of the oppressed and theatre of resistance, the role of the arts and theatre in social and cultural reform.
Ah, boy.
It's a big thing.
Where do we start with this panel, Tristan?
Hey, my boy.
Oh, my.
This is a big panel, It's a big panel. So let us start with Muhammad Muwakil. Let's bring him in. Mr. Freestone Collective himself. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself for those who may not know you?
My name is Muhammad Muwakil. I am the lead singer of Freestone Collective. I'm an artist living and working out of the Twin Islands state of Trinidad and Tobago. I am a little piece of God trapped in flesh trying to make it to this.
Boy.
Let's go.
Amen. What?
Lovely. And who we want to introduce next is another person, I can say, young in the business. One of the youngest that's on the panel this evening. We have a nice, diverse panel. Is the beautiful Miss Abeo. Come in there. Oh, we have to do this.
Yeah, we have to do
We
this.
do production, man. Good evening.
Hi, guys.
Hi. Can you tell the viewing public, because we have audience from all over the world now, a little bit about yourself, especially what you do as an artist?
Okay. Hi, my name is Abeo Jackson. I am an all-rounder, so to speak. I dabble in a lot of things. I'm an actor, a producer, a radio announcer, dancer, choreographer. And at this point in time, I'm very interested in continuing to explore art as advocacy.
Very well. Thank you, Abeo. Adding on to this panel is Mr. Tricanal. The voice, the lead man, the front man, Mr. Wendell Manwarren.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, man. Greetings, blessings. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. So many people may know you as the lead singer of Tricanal, but can you tell the viewers a little bit more about your experience in theatre?
Well, long before Tricanal, I was involved in performance as an actor. Started with Helen Camps and the Trinidad 10 Theatre way back in the day. And then I think I worked with almost everybody that came out of the 10 that went on to be a producer or director. Godfrey Seeley, Mervyn de Gauche, Raymond Chukong. And then I turned to work with Derek Walcott and, of course, working with Peter Minchell in the mass. And then came Tricanal. And I had a long time.
But you don't look it.
Try my best.
All right. Next up is a gentleman that I consider one of my early mentors in my theater career. Director, producer, lecturer. I want to introduce the one, the only, Mr. Victor Edwards. Good evening, sir.
Hi, good evening all. Wendell, Abeo.
Greetings.
Pleasure to have you, sir.
Good.
What can you tell to the folks that may not know who Mr. Victor Edwards is?
Well, you tell people everything already. What? Well, right now I really doing some writing and directing at the Irie Theatre Productions Limited. Occupies a lot of my time as well as gardening. That's what it is right now. And beautiful grandson. That's what my time is.
Lovely.
Before we move on, I'm getting some feedback from the public that's asking if when you're not speaking, can you mute your mic? Because apparently they're getting feedback on their end. So when you're not speaking, please mute your mics.
Sure.
Okay?
Word.
Adding on to the panel. So first of all, this whole idea for tonight's topic came about because we're discussing the state of the world, right? And the place of art and theater in challenging or bringing to light the oppressions that is happening all over the world, right? So it was very important to have a practitioner who is not only familiar with Trinidad theater, but also practice abroad. So all the way from Canada.
The one,
The
only, the ever youthful. Oh man.
Rhoma Spencer.
The ever
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. And just to be correct, not just Canada. Canada is a big place, you know. I am in the T dot, Toronto.
Repeat that again.
It's called the T dot. That's what the millennials. I'm using your narrative. The T dot. Toronto. So my name is Rhoma Spencer, and I am an actor, director, a play creator, comedian, and sometimes a very much a consummate chef at heart. I have been practicing for well over this year. 2020 actually is my 40th year in the business. Could you imagine? I started off with Barataria Best Village under Ronald Amaroso.
Hey, big up.
Yes, and then I moved on to Caribbean Theatre Guild with Pearl Springer, Patrick Cambridge, and Glenn Wilson. And from there, the trajectory just kept going until I decided I thought that I had reached the top of my game in Trinidad. I wanted more. I was always hungry. So I came out to Toronto to go to grad school at York University, where I did my post-grad work as a director. So I graduated. I'm a graduate of York University in theater with, of course, my emphasis is in directing.
So now we have a bit of a challenge for tonight's panel, because the screen can only hold 6 panelists.
So we didn't ask people.
Sorry, say again?
Why didn't just ask 6 people?
Then we'll get, okay, let me go.
Okay, that's good.
But it is very important for us to have all sides of the argument, or not argument, but of the discussion, and explore different perspectives. Okay? I don't know how to even bring this up because I jump out of my skin and say, I wonder if you'll be interested. And I did, and he said yes. So I'm going to introduce another panelist who you all probably would have seen in the trailer. To bring him in, I'll have to bring somebody else out, but don't worry, we'll be shuffling you all in and out as it goes by, right?
Yes.
Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, dokes.
I think
Hold on.
Let me just add him somebody with Okay, right, good. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Master Control. Right. It is my great honor and privilege to welcome someone who we might not even know of as an artist or as an actor. We know him more as a lawyer, politician, and the former Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. It is my great honor and privilege to welcome Dr. the Honorable Basdeo Panday. Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir. Good evening. Can you hear me? Mr. Panday?
I believe his mic is mute.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome.
There we go.
How are you doing today?
Hello. The audio at my end is terrible. All I hear is your voices, but I couldn't make out a single word you said. It sounded like stuttering gibberish. So that I am having enormous difficulty.
Okay. Noted. I will slow it down, okay? I'll slow down my speech. I do tend to speak quickly, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
I think I'm always.
So, Mr. Panday, a lot of people know you as a.
Just cracking up in a.
Oh wow.
Voice is cracking up in a terrible way. I can't hear. I can't
am
understand a word you're saying. Are you hearing?
Yes, we're hearing you. Is everyone on the panel hearing Mr. Panday?
We are hearing him. I am hearing him.
He's breaking up for me.
Yeah, it's breaking up
a
on
lot.
mine.
Bad.
Okay. Let's try this one more time. Let's bring him out and bring him back in, okay?
Let's try.
Yeah, try that.
Can you hear us? Mr. Panday, can you hear us now?
Okay, so here's what I will do. I would. Oh, wait.
I think it's just delayed.
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
I'm afraid it's not working at my end. That's because I'm on the phone, I guess, instead of on the computer.
Okay, so here's what I would do to the audience and the rest of panelists. I would continue a conversation with Mr. Panday and walking through off air while you all continue the conversation. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Panday, I'll call you shortly, okay?
Sorry.
All right, let's carry back. Let's carry on. Let's carry on. All right, while we work on Mr. Panday there. So, theater of resistance, ladies and gentlemen. We want to talk about our work, the role of theater in social reform. I believe that everybody here on this panel tonight could speak to some degree of working in that light. Could we just go take a few minutes, each person, and talk about how your work, anything you've done, has entered that space of addressing or taking a form of resistance? Shall I nominate?
All right, I will start, but I want to start by saying that not so much about my own involvement in any kind of theater of resistance, but I want to acknowledge and talk about what existed before in Trinidad. How that form of theater happened without us even knowing and understanding what we were doing. Okay. Of course, when I went to creative arts centers and I learned about theater of the oppressed and such, the maker of that being Augusto out of Brazil, and the Latin Americans. That is very big. That sense of theater is very big and popular in the communism world, especially in Latin America. They use it a lot. But when we have let's look back at the time of around the 1970 Black Power Revolution times. There was a group of guys called NUF, NUFF, National Union of Freedom Fighters. And these guys will meet on the block, so to speak. All right, up in places like East Dry River, what my mom would call over the bridge. Yeah, it's over the bridge, you call that?
Behind the bridge.
Behind the bridge. Thank you very much. My mother was from there, so she also died from behind the bridge, right? So a lot of it happened behind the bridge, East Dry River side, where these guys will be meeting on the block to share poetry, or what is you call now the spoken word and rap soup, right? And out of that, they were understanding and knowing about different political ideologies, yeah, and from that movement, Yeah, just spoken word and rhapsody on the block with drums and that sort of thing. They started to educate themselves around the kind of oppression that they were experiencing as young black men in Trinidad and Tobago. And they took a stance. And out of that came what we knew as what the guerrilla movement in Trinidad. And how that movement was spun out of really a place of a theater of resistance. Yeah. So in my wanting to contribute to this argument, I want to just acknowledge that a theater of resistance and how the arts, in this case spoken word and poetry, it was tried and tested in Trinidad, right, since 1970.
I would
Then,
dare say, if I may, I would dare say that our theater of resistance goes right back to the carnival, right back to the Camberley moment. And, you know, it's always been a part of the form. I mean, as a Rapso man, you mentioned Rapso, so I feel that I'm in a position to comment there. And as a mass man, having, you know, cut my teeth, grew up in Belmont, not behind the bridge, but Belmont was part of that movement as well. I always say, as a youth, I used to see NUFF painted up on the wall down by Bella Road. Yes. Big. And I was always intrigued by that. And then they would say that was the guerrillas. And I like guerrillas. We had guerrillas in Trinidad. And coming to realize, yes, we did have guerrillas in Trinidad. We had people who were prepared to fight and die for what they believed in. And I think, you know, subliminally, that has informed my entire approach to my work. It's funny, this year's theme was revolution, celebration and commemoration of the 50 years of the Black Power movement in Trinidad and Tobago. And, you know, Derek Walcott had an essay in 1970 called What the Twilight Says, where he says the future of West Indian militancy lies in arts. And as with all revolutions, you know, we're not quite sure which weapons to use. But I went on to say in our show that we know what weapon to use right now, and the weapon is love, you know, and love could take all kind of forms, as we see manifesting right now in this Black Lives Movement all around the world, right? So the theater of resistance, and as you quite rightly say, the theater of the oppressed is very specific. That term is specific to Augusto Boal and the South American. But it was all about deconstructing theater and taking it out of the classical context and making it available to the people and making sure that the people's form had a space to be heard. Best Village, for me, was part of that form. It might have been a little politicized along the way, but you know, I grew up watching Best Village, you know, and appreciating our folk tradition via Best Village. So up to today, my work is pure Best Village as far as I'm concerned. It has singing and dancing and acting and getting on and ponging and chanting and ranting and misbehaving. So yeah, we are steeped in that form. Theater of resistance is part of who we are.
For me, if I could interject, I'm fortunate enough to be a part of the movement in the Black Power. But in terms of where I started in San Fernando, I'm a Santo girl. I started with a dance company in San Fernando under Joyce City. And if it's one thing this definitely empowered us to know that our movement, our rhythm, the voice that we would use when we would learn the chants, the saraka, etc., that in itself was a form of resistance, because it was in a time where that knowledge of self is still considered a little bit taboo. It's still considered taboo. It's part of the reason maybe where there are some people who probably don't see Best Village as a, you know, traditional, more socially accepted form of theatre. But there's something so important about that Best Village aesthetic because of the fact that it is our voice. That's the power. If theatre is about knowledge and content to the people and the ability to dismantle and agitate and all that kind of stuff, then it has to come from our voice. And there's something very, very important that comes out of that particular movement, which transcends into us now being fortunate enough to be a part of what's happening in Black Box. We have other little pockets of it happening. I know in terms of when I approach creating, whether it be the stage, whether it be the screen, I'm very aware it's important to take ownership of our narrative because that is in itself. So that's how I feel about that.
Before anybody else interjects, Abeo, a little message from the viewers as well as on my end. There's a bit of feedback coming through. I'm not sure if possibly on multiple devices, one for mic or etc. But just
I will take note of it and try to adjust.
All right, great. Mr. Muwakil or Mr. Edwards, where can you weigh in terms of work that you have done?
Well, first of all, I think we have to examine the whole West Indian context. The fact that we are in fact a colonized people means that we've been impacted by a grand narrative. And whatever we do that represents who we are as a people, you understand, is in fact resistance. Whatever we do, because we have been oppressed. And oppressed people become violent. Violence is a part of oppression, especially when the oppressed seek to free themselves from those narratives that tend to whitewash them, to erase them, to erase their traditions and the cultures and so on. So we, all Caribbean people who are considered as the other, we are in fact agents of resistance, because whether we want to accept it or not, whoever we are, we have been oppressed. About the theater, I mean, the two people on the screen right now who would know that my entire theatrical life has been a life of resistance. Ask anybody in NDAX, ask anybody at the TFA what my concept of theater is. And it is always about who we are. All of the theater that I've been doing since the inception of Irie Theater Productions Limited, except for the pearl that we did to honor Music Leaver's passing and so on. Every single piece of theater, either the work of a local playwright, either the work that I myself have, that I have done, work that I have created in the process of the last 10 years. And it is because I understand that if we don't tell our own stories, if like we don't dance our own dances, if we don't write our own poetry like Wendell, and we don't sing our own song, nobody else is going to do it. So therefore, our investment in terms of our resistance as a people have to come from within our own bowels. And that is why I have been so anathema, as it were, to all the foreign stuff that people promote and so on. And so help my God, I will continue to do that as long as I have life.
I just want to tell the viewers and the panel that we're still having difficulties in getting Mr. Panday, Dr. Panday. Sorry, we're having problems getting him back. We'll keep trying, but in the meanwhile, we continue the conversation. I also, in trying to get him back, was not following the conversation, so I don't know where we reached. So I'm just going to be listening, and then I'll pick up and then come back in, okay?
Yeah, we have Mohammed now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Edwards basically took the word out of my mouth, because I was going to say that
sorry, I apologize.
No, it's fine. I'm glad I could sit down and listen more, because I feel like with this kind of panel, I really just want to listen to what Wendell, Rhoma, and Victor have to say. I really, but we see all around us, that encroaching foreign energy every single where we turn, right? We hear it. I often observe, like, my nieces and my nephews, because they watch so much Netflix and so many foreign things. Whenever they play among themselves in American accent. Like, whenever they have their dollies and stuff, it's never in a Trinidadian accent, hardly. It's always in these American accents. And so I have often felt the way that was just expressed. Like every single thing that we do is a pushback. You know what I mean? Constantly creating that space around us just to exist. Just to exist. Like every single thing we do. Every time we come up with a slang, a new slang that they can't imitate. Every time we dress a certain type of way. Every time we learn a new dance or we learn an old dance or we remember something. You know what I mean? All of those things for me are acts of resistance. You know what I mean? Every time you learn to cook the way your grandmother does cook and then you kind of improve on it and whatever. Every single thing. All of these acts that become us, the acts of resistance. As far as specifically what I have done to contribute, I am very, very glad that when I came into this space, people like Wendell existed, people like Rhoma existed, and Edwards, because there was already a precedent set. So far be it from me to say I came and did anything new. I came and I found a legacy of resistance, and I am merely just following on that legacy. I'm grateful and I'm glad to be able to do that.
Looking at the idea of foreign versus we and local, there's a view that's going around that what is happening in other parts of the world does not apply to us. That is not our fight. It's not our story. And I personally have gotten into some debates, heated and not so heated, about history, and Mr. Edwards, you talk about our past. And it almost seems, at least from my perspective, a lot of things, history repeats itself. You know, and with the age of technology and information, a lot of people are brighter than before.
We hope so. That's an assumption. They may be exposed to more information that doesn't necessarily make them brighter.
I would take that definitely. And so the question for the next part of the discussion is, what are your views, first of all, about this whole idea that what is taking place in the other parts of the world doesn't affect us, or that's not our story or fight? And if it is so, how?
Well, if I may, Wayne, we live in the world. And CLRJ and say we're the first modern people in the world, the soul side of the world. It's a whole enterprise that has given rise to a whole new man, you know. Dr. Hilary Beckles say, you know, slavery came from Jamaica and Barbados to South Carolina and then spread from there. So that Caribbean connection, pole to pole, corner to corner, has always been there. But we must make a distinction. The Black Lives Movement is a thing that's very specific to North America, and it's something we stand in solidarity with and we encourage, and it's an idea whose time has come and is long in coming. And there's a danger in just trying to say what's happening there is what's happening here, and not really paying attention to what our real story is, because it's way more nuanced than that. We're talking about a minority that has been oppressed for a mighty long time by a majority. And Trinidad, our oppression, as Victor pointed out, it plays out in different ways. We are self-oppressors in many regards right now. And a lot of it is through ignorance. You know, our first prime minister was a historian, and he said, our ignorance of our history is one of the most damning things, and it must be corrected. And in order to do so, we must become the subjects and not the objects of our story. And that way we will not be the playthings of other people. So I think it's very important to take time to understand our history. Lancelot Lane say, if a man wants to set false standards for you to follow, to heed what you say, blow away. And don't believe what foreigners do is better than you, because that ain't true. It's a mental block that I had to unlock. So there's a lot of work that we need to do on our end and for ourselves. But by all means, what is happening in America and across the globe, we are a part of. So we can't separate ourselves from that at all.
Right.
Yeah, I see it as no different than the struggle against apartheid in a way.
Absolutely.
I mean, for me, people who were saying, oh, it probably had people at that time who were saying we have our own problems here, and it was apartheid, and they in that moment couldn't see what apartheid would come to mean to the rest of the world, and how dread that was, you know. And for us to make that same kind of mistake now and be like, nah, that's not my thing. The more pressure we can put by any means, and the more we can highlight it. I mean, you have you have institutions like Lloyd's Bank coming out now today and saying, they apologizing for things that happened then, which to me now is the grounds for reparation. Do we realize how major this moment is? It concerns all of us deeply, deeply.
For me, sorry.
You go ahead.
Yeah. For me, the question of solidarity and the idea of diaspora and that very Pan-African feeling and moment, again, as Mohammed said, I grew up during the time of witnessing the globe come together, very young, but witnessing the globe come together in support of the ending of apartheid. So I remember what that moment felt like, and that there was a definite feeling of shift in the air. And it feels very much the same way. This is a really exciting time, and it would be remiss of us to think that we insulated from that. And jumping onto what Wendell says in terms of not co-opting the idea of what Black Lives Matter means to the United States, but also understanding our own colonial legacies, that we have to unpick that, the polarization in our country between the two major races, which is as a direct result of something that we inherited from colonialism. I mean, we have our own things to unpick where social reform is concerned, where rehabilitation is concerned, where being able to use education and the arts and whatnot to yes.
Feedback.
Yes.
Yes, I'm hearing you. On our end, but there's either feedback.
Okay, I think she had a drop.
I
believe
don't know.
you probably had a bit of a drop or something just now. But you're fine now, I think.
Yeah.
Are you hearing me now? Is it better now? Yeah? Yeah. I was just saying, in terms of understanding how we take ownership of our narrative now, in terms of using education and the arts and social reform and rehabilitation to make a difference, as opposed to just thinking exactly what is happening in the United States is happening here. But it's wonderful that there's this movement across the globe that we can now, it almost has given us permission to have some tough conversations. I mean, we've been talking about the pulling down of the statue. I know Shabaka and the Crossroads have been dealing with that for the last 4 years. The First Peoples have been talking about it since the 70s. And yet it felt as though it was stuck. And for some reason, all of a sudden now, these are the kinds of conversations that we are happening, that we have permission to start happening. So I think this is a really exciting time to be alive. I don't understand people who are anxious for things to go back to the way they were. This is a moment where it's just never going to be the same after this. And we should take advantage of that, So yeah.
I just want to say that while the technology has made each and every one of us a citizen of the world, in the sense that the information comes as readily as it can, we have to be careful that young people don't see or don't take all that they're seeing as a movie, Very, very careful about that.
Correct.
So therefore, the experiences that we have to give the young people through the theater must be live and direct. We have to be able to give the young people an opportunity to begin to understand through the theater who they are. Yeah. I just want to say, coming back to the theater thing, as a world citizen, whenever I travel, wherever I go, whether it's to England, Italy, France, wherever I've been, I always go to the theater. So I've seen theater all over the world. But what I'm saying is that theater is for them. You see, so I go to Canada and I see something about the second generation Indians there who trying to make a living. That's something that is appropriate to them. Then I would have gone to Broadway and I would have seen something about the plane that had to land somewhere in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, and they made a whole play about it. That deals with their particular thing. And I think more and more the theater abroad is beginning to deal with those kinds of issues rather than those airy-fairy things that they deal with. And I want to suspect that our theater must seriously consider dealing with our issues. One of the things that is happening, and we need to talk about, is the whole CSEC and Cape theater issues, and how we still lagging in the sense that a lot of our own West Indian writers still can't find themselves on the syllabus, whether it is the direct syllabus or whether it is the suggested reading list. You know, we have to become better educators of ourselves. You see, otherwise we're going to continue having this fight of fighting the people who perpetuating this grand narrative. These aristocrats in the country who want us to believe as they believe, and that we should not believe. You know, a friend of mine said to me a number of years ago, "You is not the same little boy who come out from the cane fields, you know." But that keeps me grounded because that is where I started, you see, and that is where I learned to live. And I always have to remain grounded to those traditions and those beliefs and those memories and so on to make me into the person that I am. And I think that as an artistic community, we have to become very, very serious. Not only about
it's a serious thing you're talking about, Victor, because that's the self-contempt that they seek to impose, on each other, that we have to challenge in a serious way. You know, I work with young people. I work with Lilliput Theatre, and last year the theme for our show was Airi, the story of the First Peoples, and we prepare for that show with months and months and months and months of research. And one of the things that I had them doing was finding out all the various village names that still have an Amerindian retention. We dealt up in the story of the Pitch Lake, and for me that is fundamental, so that, as Mohammed said, all these young people talking Yankee now, and they think it's a movie, and they think they're living in Nickelodeon land or wherever they're watching, or whatever YouTube channel they're on. But it's so important that they're grounded in knowledge of self. And if you come from the cane field, or if I was a little red boy that come from Belmont, I'm not so ashamed about that. I started from there, and I walking in my power right through. You understand?
If I could just interject one more time, I think it was so informative last year when we did Tisha. Are y'all getting feedback, or y'all are cool?
I'm hearing a kind of
no, cool.
That was kind
You're good.
I hit something.
I don't hype it something. Okay. Yeah, but lastly, a little bit. There's a lot of treble. Sorry about that. Last year when we did Tisha, and with Wendell directing it, I choreographed, and Wendell was at pains to, of course, keep the integrity of the work, but at the same time, put it in a context in which younger audiences, because the majority of our audiences were school audiences, that they can really grasp it. And I remember, even though it was a story that I knew, seeing it a different way with different eyes, and then seeing it through the eyes of the students who came, who were not aware that Tisha had so much comedy in it, that there was so much angst in it, and they fell in love with the story. And it really underlined again for me how important our own voice is, and taking work that people consider old work and finding new context that young people can relate to in a real way, and find power in their own voices with it.
I want to just go back to the fact that you're saying that what is happening, in North America, how and the protests and that sort of thing world over, that we in Trinidad or in the Caribbean are not thinking that it is our story too, all right? And I want people to just harp back on a Caribbean man, a West Indian man named Marcus Garvey.
Marcus Garvey.
Jamaican man, who mobilized and talk about Pan-Africanism, all the narrative that is going on today is informed and inspired by what Marcus Garvey says so long ago. So to say that, that story don't belong to us and kind of thing, is that we really don't know our history.
It's very much linked. It's very much linked. The man who came up with the term institutionalized racism was Kwame Ture. He's a Trinidadian man who grew up in Belmont. Caribbean people have been leading, Caribbean people have been leading the conversations in terms of this kind of thing. We have a 10-point plan for reparations. So when Lloyd started talking nonsense today, Hilary Beckles was able to say, well, actually, we have a document, and these are the things that we want, and these are the parameters in which we want them, and we would like to enact them on our own terms. And there's something empowering in that, in terms of your Caribbean voice, owning your Caribbean voice, owning your Trinidadianness, and understanding where we fit. I am a 6th-generation American. My people fought in the Great War in 1812. On the side of the British, ran away from an estate in Virginia, came to Trinidad and Tobago, and was given lands in the companies in Moruga. So for me, I understand where my solidarity lies, both in terms of where my people have come from and where we are right now in terms of this global outlook and the power of the diaspora.
Yeah, the notion of black power came from Stokely Carmichael, you see? So, we have to be able to recall these things when we make a stance, say things like, their story don't include us. We were all, at the end of the day, hunted out of Africa and brought to these lands. Okay? So,
yeah. And by that argument, I mean, by the argument that it doesn't concern us, then Pan-Africanism was a waste of time then. That's what you're basically saying. You're saying that all of those strides made by people like George Padmore, etc., all that was a waste of time. We've never been concerned with only our specific destiny. It's one aim, one heart, one destiny.
And then there's just ignorance as well that's informing, statements like that.
Yeah.
When people say things like that, it's really ignorance in the true sense of the word. Ignorance, and then the Trinidad ignorance on top of that. You're just saying business. You ain't really want to know.
The liberation of Africa.
You see when you make a very important. Sorry, Rhoma.
Sure.
The thing is that the majority of people in the society are passive. They're just recipients. They're not active participants. And Boyle and Frary and these fellows and them early on in formulating the state of the oppressed really formulated a process where the audience, the masses, got involved in the decision making.
Yeah.
The only time people get involved in decision making is when they go to vote. You know what I mean? Or they lobby and so on. But what we need to do is to find a system where the masses, can become more involved in decision making. And I want to have back to.
Well, they have one called Carnival, but right now the Carnival getting huffed by a set of people that ain't really in business with the people thing. I listened to a long talk this morning and people getting tired.
I want to go back to the CSEC and the trade thing, where a lot more students, a lot more young people are being given the opportunity to perform. But whether they're performing in a way that brings a heightened sense of awareness of who they are and what their lot might be in their Trinidadianness or their West Indianness is something for another discussion. But there are a lot more people involved, a lot more people performing, right? And it is something that we need to look at in terms of how we can become better agitators for the things that will make us masters of our own destinies.
But just to touch on that real briefly, one of the things I've been thinking about, seeing the amount of pushback that we've gotten from people saying, we don't have no problems here and whatever. I've been thinking about the lack of the ability to dream beyond your situation. I feel like a lot of us have accepted where we are, that we will only live in certain types of houses, that most people will never actually just travel for the sake of traveling, that most people will never earn beyond a certain amount, that you'll never hold a certain kind of job. I feel like a lot of us within the society, we've accepted that this is Trinidadian life. We will live in small houses practically on top of each other. We will, like, this is just what it is. When you go in Port of Spain, you're going to feel unsafe. You might probably get robbed 3 or 4 times in your life. This is just how it is. And for some reason, I feel like we've lost that ability to dream beyond that. So when somebody says to you, we don't have no problems here, to me, what I'm hearing is, I have come to accept this to the point where I feel like this is what life is.
And if you read The Loveless is Just a Movie, there's a brilliant passage in there where they talk about how people's dreams have been appropriated, and you wake up in the morning and you go by the man and you play a mark based on what you dream, right? And the idea of dreaming for a better life has been totally appropriated. It's a brilliant passage. People need to go and buy that book and read it. You know, The Loveless is one of the fellas that we have ignored to our own detriment. And it's something we continue to do to ourselves. You know, Victor talked about more people being exposed to theater. To what end? What's the point of all this exposure? What are you going to do with it at the end of it, right? If you don't know yourself at the end of the day.
The thing is that when you expose the situation, sorry, I just want to respond to Wendell. The idea with the theater of the oppressed was that when you solve problems in the theater, those solutions will obviously follow you into real life.
And this is my point. And when they take Earl book off the curriculum because of one fuck. You know what I'm saying?
That's no point.
And they take it and they hide that away, and so much more is inside of that because of one word. And we have to study all kind of stupidness.
And the amount of different words we've been watching on TV late in the night.
Lord knows.
I want to add to the conversation. To piggyback of something Muhammad said, and maybe Abeo and Wendell could add to it. I remember sometime, either in a direct conversation with Raymond or hearing him talk about why he created the style of theater that he did, he mentioned, or it was mentioned, that he was tired of seeing Trinidadian life portrayed in a particular way, always the backyard, always the poor, downtrodden Trinbagonian lifestyle, and he decided to create a style of theater that showed us in a more affluent light. To what extent is that correct? I'm not sure if that's just my mind making this thing up, or can any one of you all speak more towards that?
Well, let me speak before Wendell and them jump in. Let me say my 2 cents, right? No, I want to say, because you see, it's in my book. I have the magazine where Raymond said in 1992 that he was doing the kind of theater that he's doing to attract audiences. It's written in black and white. It was researched by Deborah Jean-Baptiste, right? Back in those days. I'm doing this kind of theater to attract audiences. When the audiences come into the theater, the kind of theater that I do will change. I'm just repeating what Deborah Jean-Baptiste said.
Change, you said?
That would what?
I didn't get the last one.
Yeah, the kind of theater that he was doing will be different. That it's in black and white. So I just wanted to add that.
I happened to be around those days. Wow. I happened to be in tent with Raymond and Mervyn and all them fellas. And I remember when we started doing commercial theater, Rhoma, Rhoma was there. When we did Asses and Extremities and those shows. Mass Appeal, and the audiences came out. They loved it. Shows with high production values and whatnot. We're like, wow, we could do this kind of theater. But I personally, something happened to me. I was tired of trying to wrap my mouth around them American phraseologies and stuff. It didn't sit well with my soul. I wanted something else. Unfortunately, I got the chance to do Walcott. You know. People made choices. We were the first generation that dared to believe that we could live from theater, you know, so it was imperative that audiences come in. I remember watching Rhoma and in Devil's Concubine, Rhoma and Danny, you know, very experimental piece. And in those days, you had a mix of stuff happening. You had the experimental stuff. You had Godfrey writing his own things that were very topical and kind of controversial. You know, one of our sons is missing and whatnot. And then what started happening is that you started taking all these farces and adapting them. But for me, the adaptations were only on the surface because the underlying rhythm was not us, and I wanted more. and who was quite content with that. I didn't have no problem with them. They were my friends. They were my, contemporaries, and I never vexed with them for doing what they did. And if anybody wanted a different kind of theater, I always say, well, you do it. And that's what I did for myself. I didn't like it, so I went off and do my own thing after passing through, Walcott and Minchell and all those other things. And I always try to encourage that, we try to want somebody to do something that they're not doing, and just do your thing or encourage other people to do their thing. I mean, you were always doing your thing, Victor. You talk about them with days and that. You say when Victor come in, oh Lord, bacchanal, Victor come to turn it up, and I like that. You're not taking nothing for granted.
You'll forgive me. I still get a little emotional when I talk about Raymond. I was fortunate when I came back home from school in 2007. I remember I was home for about a week, and Raymond was doing expos in Queen's Hall with Nikki Crosby, and I was still the little girl from South, and I saw that he was doing expos, and I look in the phone book and I find Chukong number, and I called. It was his house phone. I got Ganesh, his son, and Ganesh gave me his cell number, and I called Chukong's cell number, and I said, listen, I now come back home from school. I want to be involved. I want to do things. And he said, well, come. And some people may have thought he was kidding. He didn't think I was serious. And I jumped in a taxi. Those days I wasn't driving. Jumped in a taxi and went up to Queen's Hall. And from there was a mentorship that happened that is the kind of stuff that I couldn't have imagined. And my thing is, Raymond did what he did. That was his choice. That's what he did. But what he also did was also create opportunities for young artists and young aspiring actors, producers. Once he wanted to learn, he always opened his doors. And to me, that is a part of Raymond's legacy that sometimes people dismiss in terms of what he has done for young people within the industry. Raymond's ideology was always about honesty. Being honest and being authentic in everything that you do, being excellent in everything that you do. If you're doing Best Village, be excellent. If you're doing comedy, be excellent. If you're doing Shakespeare, be excellent. Because he always felt that the industry was too small for this kind of segmented thing that we like to do in Trinidad and Tobago, because sometimes we get so busy pointing fingers at each other that we don't realize, again, just as we have power in diaspora, we would have power in a unity within the industry that could really then spark the agitation that we want in a collective way, in different ways. So, I mean, for me, Raymond made the choices that he made, and yes, there was some credit to him saying that this is what Trinidadian audiences want. I do speak from experience as well in terms of having some experience as a producer. There's a certain market within the industry that's what they want, and then there's another market that wants what we would do in Black Box, and there's another market that will want
not as
what
big though, and that's why we're a back of damn ass doing a set of theater for nobody.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. My first show that I did, I did deep theater, nice and lots of ethos and pathos and all that wonderful stuff. And it had like about 20 people in Central Bank Auditorium, if that much. You know what I mean? So you just have to decide where you fit in the mix of this. And I think in this present day context, just continuing to remember that to be an artist in any form is to be an activist, and find the middle ground for that.
Rhoma, we need to talk about Tony and Tony's work.
Yeah, I want people to also to understand that the work that Raymond is doing, Raymond wasn't the one who started that, I mean, it had Judy Stone doing theater in a hotel under the trees, doing that kind of a work. And so was a brother named Devendra Dubey with a company called Alternative National Theatre. It was doing the same kind. the same plays that Raymond started to do at first, the Bowen, the Odd Couple, all those were done before. And it was done under the auspices of either Alternative National Theatre with David Rodriguez and Julie Stone. All right. So when we talk about what Raymond has done to the theatre and all of that, understand that he was not the first person to have done it. Okay, he just probably raised raised the bar notch where we could have gone to the theatre from Tuesday night, plays from Tuesday to Sunday. And according to how popular it is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, could have even pushed doing 2 shows on a Saturday or a Sunday.
Yeah, there's a time when they had matinees and shows would run for 4 weeks.
4 weeks.
And which weeks that a whole other component of theatre is the audience, right? And sometimes audiences
from Tuesday, Mondays was off, as it is internationally, and plays running from Tuesday to Sunday, running for 3 weeks, a month, and sometimes have held over performances, which is not something that we're seeing now. Yeah.
Well, I just want to add that if I could speak for Irie Theatre, we've been running now for 10 years. And for 10 years, we've done only, except for the Pearl, we've done only local work by local writers, including with myself. And I dare say that we're still alive, and we have the ability, in terms of what our statements and so on, to continue doing the work that we're doing. As a matter of fact, right now I'm researching a new idea, a new person, a new personality, in the Trinidadian history to write the script and produce a new play for next year as well. There are so many stories to be written. There's so many things that we can do for ourselves. Things that all we need to do is to have that notion of inquiry, to dig deep within our own ancestral roots, our own history, and find those stories that can be as dramatic as anything else, and teaches us about who we are as a people. My thing is, I've always been, when people come to my place, they laugh and they have fun, but they also learn something. See about themselves. So that is what is important. I don't just want to go. I don't want to go to an experience to just laugh and have a good time. And then when I come outside, my head is dirty because I want to remember what it is I saw, or what was the value of the time spent in interacting with whatever it is. You know what I mean? I want the meaning. Because I'm here long. I cannot go to the theater now and sit down and not be a critic. My wife hates me for that. When she's sitting next to me, wherever we are in the world, hush them out.
Once again, that's a very valid point. I see that Mohammed has something to say. I'd just like to give him a chance to contribute to the conversation.
I'm looking at the panel here, right, and I kind of consider myself to be the newbie when it comes to theater experience, right? I came in, the first time I ever did anything on stage in terms of theater was in 2007, and I came in via the door of DCFA, right? Now coming in via the door of DCFA, I did a play called Guinea's Other Sons, right? So DCFA brought me through this door of very serious theater, almost like we don't care too much about having big audiences and whatever, and it was almost like what Raymond Chukong and they was doing, that's not theater and that's destroying culture and whatever. These were things that, that's why I came in, right? And then as the years progressed as an artist, I realized there's something very, very important about appreciating your audience and not denigrating them for the sake of what you think your values are or they might be, right? Because people are where they're at. And you don't have to come in and beat somebody over the head trying to convince them or whatever. It's like what Wendell said. You want something done, do it. I don't think that there has to be a trade-off between having message and drawing crowds. I just think maybe we haven't found it yet. Maybe we haven't found the language, or maybe even the generation to hear what we have to say in terms of that in regards to theater. Maybe they're not here yet. but I definitely don't feel anymore like
We found it. We found it a couple times, Mohammed. We find it and then it slips away. We find it and then it slips away. So it's a perennial struggle.
Yeah.
You know, when Tony was doing Gene and Dinah and things like that, they were hugely popular. It
Right.
was about us. When we first started the Three Canal show, we ran for 21 nights.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was in Chicanal in 2006.
Yeah.
Was the first time, and that tired me out. We ran for
Audiences kept coming through the door. So, I mean,
but Wendell, I don't understand why we can't sustain ourselves. You know what I
Well-
mean? You're right. Because it comes and goes. It's a hit and miss sort of thing. You know what I mean? Roll with his trilogy, and he did a couple other things and so on. I mean, you know, Three Canal, the Tony Hall.
well, this is where you start to get into the support to afford all of this to happen because the artists doing the work, right? The support,
Right.
the support systems, the
So
mechanisms,
that's
the
another
funding,
that's another point of
all those
contention.
things. Yeah.
Where is the support? Where
The
is all the
diversification
money
of the economy away from oil and gas that we keep talking about. I mean, not
Why
committing to.
why is the ministry running a theater group?
Why is the
You know?
ministry producing?
Yes,
All that
Exactly.
Those are
Exactly.
interesting
We have so much to
questions.
talk
Very
about.
interesting question.
That is also oppression.
Rhoma, you come from
Those
you're
are
in a place
interesting
now where you have
questions.
funding and thing, right? And you could write a thing and you could get a grant and all that kind of thing. We need to talk about things like
These are
that.
interesting discussions. These are interesting discussions that we should have, but just to bring it back to what we're discussing today, I had a conversation with Victor Edwards and some of my other colleagues at different times, and I remember when I now started in theater, I used to wonder, no, there was this one play that required diversity, but we couldn't find the diversity in the cast, all right? And I started to ask myself, where are the Indians in theater? Where are the East Indians in theater? But I did not see them. I didn't encounter them in the style of theater that I was doing. Many years after that, I saw Sundar, and I realized that there are a lot of East Indians in Victor Edwards' productions. And what is even more interesting is that his theater tells the stories of the Indo-Trinidadian population and gives them a voice. So bringing it back to theater of the oppressed, I want to know from Victor Edwards, what inspired you to create that style of theater? How do you think it has benefited Trinidad and Tobago as a whole?
Well, the thing is that growing up, I knew I was an Indian. I didn't know that.
You didn't discover that.
That's a fair observation. Fair observation.
No. Yes, I didn't know that I had to be an Indian.
Exactly.
That's a different thing. If you look at my first couple of plays that I wrote and give my name, if you never knew me, you would never assume that the work that I had done in early on is the work of somebody of East Indian heritage. But then I was told that I had to be an Indian. You understand? Someone, seriously. The statement was made by a prominent writer in Trinidad and Tobago, at whose home I was after having gone to Paloma Mohammed and her husband's place up in Cascade, wherever it was. And he said, let the Indian people write their own stories. You see, no, I never considered myself as an Indian, I always saw myself as a Trinidadian and wanted to espouse Trinidadian values and those kinds of things. But then the man said, let the Indian people write their own stories. And then it dawned on me that I have Indian heritage. And when I examined the thing, there was nobody telling the stories. You see? Now, it's not here to say that Irish theater only does theater with an East Indian background, because we've done a play on Dr. Eric Williams, we've done A Brighter Sun, we've done 10 to 1 by Sparrow, and we've done The Pearl. But in between there, I have to find, as I remember saying to what's his name, the minister at the time of social integration and whatever the ministry was, who had asked me to do something. Yeah, Dikoto. Who had asked me to write this play about in reenactment on Nelson Island. And I was working on this big project with the Brighter Sun. And I told him, I say, well, I go see. And then it struck me that if I didn't do this project, if I didn't write this play, my ancestors would be angry. And it's on that basis that I took up the challenge to do Brighter Sun, to do the reenactment of Indian arrival, and to do something called The Adventures of Guru Deva, which is the only novel written by Naipaul's father, Prasad Naipaul. We did all of that in 2013. But you're right, there was no serious East Indian oriented playwright. I don't even know if there's any right now. And remember, I still don't see myself as East Indian. I see myself as Trinidadian. So the story of Tudor Sadhu is not an Indian story. I had to make that absolutely clear to the musicians who wanted to make the music Indian. I said, no, this is a story about a Trinidadian Indian. Right? A man, an Indian who was trying to find his space in the Trinidadian landscape. The story of Nagma, who was a real inventor who came to Trinidad. That's another place that they call Tactile. It's about real people. It's not no make-believe thing that tells the history, right? So there's a history on one side to tell, the experiences. And then, as Tristan said, there was a thing about people, and people were very, very interested to be a part of those experiences. So that's why when you came to see Sundar, you would have seen about 40 people on the stage at one point in time, because people were interested in that kind of thing. But like I said, the impetus was that statement that was made by that writer that said, let the Indian people write their own stories. And I felt that it was important that I begin to do something that represented that ancestral part of me. Remember, I grew up on Golconda Shiva Estate. I lived in barracks. My grandparents were cool and they hadn't mind pig and those kinds of things. So I understand the nitty-gritty of what that was. So a lot of the stories, take me back to that time. So I don't know if that answers your question, Tracy. Yes, Rhoma.
It's funny that you should say that, Victor, because back in the day with the Indian writers I knew then was Ralph Maraj and Shane Bikram. And they weren't really writing from an Indian perspective per se. Yeah?
That's right.
The one play that I fully really understood the Indian presence and their contribution to this land is written by a Chinese man, Willie Chen.
Freedom Road.
Funny, Anyhow, I want to talk a little bit too about when I was now coming from the theater world, there was this very derogatory phrase that they used to call legitimate and illegitimate theater. I don't know if you all ever heard. And I because I started and was in West Village, I was seen as coming from illegitimate theater. And the moment I tried to cross and go into legitimate theater with the Caribbean theater, and I loved Intu dearly to this day, I remember Intu was one of those who was very, very much against West Village, and anything that I would have done wrong, it was because I was in the illegitimate theater, and I need to get out of the illegitimate theater to fully, be seen as a serious actor in the legitimate theater thing. But I must say that it is what it is, and it was, and will always be the illegitimate theater that made me the artist that I am today. All right, because if it wasn't for West Village, there are plenty of things I would know about my country if it wasn't for my participation of West Village. Only now people start to know about the American and culture of the American and the company villages and so on, and the history of these people. Several generations of people didn't even know that history. I know that through West Village because it had a village called Hardbargain.
That's right.
And Hardbargain got its name because when the Americans came and given the hey, that is the piece of land you get. It was hard, it was difficult to till that land, to make something of it. And that's why they said they got a hard bargain. And that's why the village was called Hard Bargain.
And I want to endorse that. Thank God for that.
They got a new grant. So they moved from Hard Bargain to a new grant of land that they got.
And for me, all that is part of what I call booming up history, which is actually investing in our stories. So many of us, we don't know the history, much less the story. So plenty times what I do in working with young people is I try to find out what's your story, what's the story of your community, where you come from, what's the name of the place, how it get that name. It's so important that we don't know nothing about ourselves in many ways. And Best Village, because we had one TV station when I was growing up, I say thank God for that, TTT. Every 6 o'clock, you say pum 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 putum putum pum.
I remember.
And whether you like it or not, you learn about Bel Air, you learn about Piquet, you learn about. They used to try a Chinese dance, which I don't understand why everybody had to do a Chinese dance if you didn't have no Chinese in the village. But say what?
Because then we knew the word that is very popular here now, cultural diversity.
Exactly.
Practicing cultural diversity long time.
Long time.
I think
I actually
while we're on air here, we have to really give credit to two men. And that's Earl Lovelace, two men, Earl Lovelace and Ifebo Wilkinson.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something, Rhoma. It was Ifebo Wilkinson who brought legitimacy to Best Village.
Who brought what?
Legitimacy. With that play that Muwakil acted in
Rupert.
Hold on. I know Rupert Griffith. Hold on. In 1980, when the National Drama Association was being formed, and I had the handwritten note by Grace Maraj, her handwriting, a decision was taken in 1980 that said Best Village was not a theater.
Was what?
Handwritten by Grace Maraj was the then secretary of the Best Village.
Yeah, I remember Grace.
That Best Village was not theater. I understand the contribution of Rupert, but when Ifebo did Bitter Cassava, right? When Ifebo did Bitter Cassava, and I think before that, Earl Lovelace was the first writer that wrote an entire play. Remember, you used to have 16 dances and those kinds of things?
Yes.
Yes, Justina's
Calypso, yeah. But you see, to even say that Ifebo legitimize it is to buy into the whole thing that it was illegitimate.
Yeah.
You understand?
No, but from my point of view, but from my point of view, from my research and so on, having seen the handwritten note myself, in my research and so on, that said a National Drama Association of Trinidad and Tobago deemed, under James Lewa at the time, deemed the Best Village non-theater. So
and that's why when Godfrey Seeley brought a bunch of us, we went and take over and that because there was on stupidness at a certain point in time. Remember that time? Yes.
All right.
What?
We will know about the place.
What?
Yeah.
What Ifebo brought to it is the sense of how you can create a musical and have music and theater in one accord, whereas before it was it was all, all in compartments. A skit, then a folk skit, a carnival, music.
Because of that presentation, they accepted something like this.
Ronald Amoroso, because when Ronald saw what Ifebo did that one year, he said, okay, so then I could do it. And that is how the whole dynamic of the Best Village thing started to change, how the drama was presented. It now became a musical. and not, these little these skits. Yeah. And as I said, prior to Ifibo, Rupert Griffith was the man doing that. You have people like Rupert Griffith. You have people like the Pierrot Grenade guy name again?
Felix Edinburgh.
Felix.
Yeah. For the village of Pity Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Playing Mount Diablo.
Yeah.
Sims, Sims. Yeah. These were the people who were revolutionizing the way how West Village was.
Mount Diablo and Barataria.
Yeah.
As we talking about the word revolution, I wanna just stick a pin in there.
Yes.
And not negating speaking about Best Village. We'll probably come back to it, kind of segue back into it. But I want to engage Mohammed a bit because of your role in the Kambule reenactment. We're talking about theater of resistance, and we mentioned before that a lot of people under the impression that what's going on in the world do apply here. When we ever do that, we don't. There was a demonstration on the savannah, and I was witness to a lot of comments on social media and they're against so they'll be fighting. We don't do that thing along those lines, and I feel that people really know where we what really went on.
They know how we get here,
and I really talk about theater of resistance. I have things like Hussein and commenters mentioned it, Ram Leela, but more specifically the Kambule and that reenactment and what it represents in our history. And considering everything we talk about, having now the freedom to even do theater on a whole.
Partaking Carnival.
Carnival. Mm-hmm. We mentioned that quite early, but it was just a mention. I want to just bring it back there while we talk about all the best videos, and I kind of go a little further back. And Mohammed, somebody know straight up here. The role of these characters, these archetypes, these elements, these traits that's up on the screen right now, the stickman and the jamet. Mohammed, what you can say to that?
While I am very honored that you would choose to ask me that, I telling you, I real contented to sit down here and listen. If I have Rhoma, Wendell, these I know.
Which honestly, I would want to jump in because I want to bring it back to what was conceptualized by Tony Hall and oh God, a guy from Cupid,
John Cupid.
The Kambule that was conceptualized by them is nothing to what I see is happening now. What I'm seeing happening now is a presentation. It is no longer a theater of participation. It is now a presentation and with spectators and not actors.
Mm-hmm. That's a little bit perfect.
And let me tell you something. Every year for the last 27 years, Tricanal takes to the streets on a Juve morning in commemoration of the Kambule. We're not putting on a play. We're not doing a reenactment. We're not doing a tribute. Every year, we relive the living ritual of the Juve, which was born from the Kambule.
Yeah.
Do you understand the distinction I'm making?
Yes.
Every year, we get dirty. It gets real. Every year, you feel as if you have to take your life in your hand. You have to fight.
A theater of liberation.
Absolutely.
A theater of participation. Not so and look at.
The one thing I would say though, just is that being a part of the Kambule and then further on, meeting members of the stick community and the calendar community, for whatever reason, we have not been taught about our warriorhood. It's a kind of way we get taught as Trinidadians where, they didn't really have slavery for that long. They didn't have that many rebellions here. They never fight for independence. They never. And somewhere along the line, the Jamet and the Stickman just get left out now. Like people didn't lay down and die for this place now. We never get told that. So many other places we revere them for the revolution. Jamaica, Haiti, Cuba. We listen, but we don't realize that we also have a tradition. It's just a bit different in some ways. And for me,
that speaks to the self-contempt that afflicts us so terribly. And we have to keep explaining ourselves again and again and again and again, right? In 1834, or 1838, on emancipation, that carnival that took place after that was a different carnival. It was the Cambule Carnival. The Jamets used to rule the tongue, as Rhoda would say, right? And it took them until 1919 to stop it from happening. And the only way they do it was by putting in competition. And from 1919 to now, is our whole next carnival taking place, and the people that give you the carnival being pushed aside. And you know where they go now? Now they're Trinidad. It's the same Jamet culture, same Jamet expression.
They're outside the rope.
Yes.
My mother
We allow the rope to come back.
My mother used to talk about that. I used to visualize the idea of rope. She said that first the white people used to be on top of trucks and lorries.
Exactly.
But they liked how the black people was behaving, and they liked the joy that they were seeing going on the road. And they decided to come down off of the truck on the road. But then now, too much black people inside of that.
Yeah, but because that's when it became safe for them to come back down off the truck, you see. And what they used to do it was very simple, competition, which meant it had rules. No whining, no jamming, no this and no that in. And we buy into the rules wholeheartedly. And then they come and they sponsor. And if they got sponsor, we dragon can dance. That's why poor fish I didn't know how to function when the sponsor come in the band. Because part of the concept in Muhammad is the ritual warriorhood. If 2-3 boy pelt and 2-3 head get bust, that is it. Nobody in there, you know. It's like ritual.
And his head after bust. People
Yes.
come to see blood. They come out to see head bust.
Yeah.
You know?
But the thing get pretty and safe. Rules make that happen, and now rules and access. Now you have to send your picture to get in a party and all that kind of shit.
And it's really interesting because. Sorry, Victor, go ahead.
What is that about getting up to send a picture?
I'm just saying that that's what the aristocrats do all the time. The people in charge, that's what they do. It's like remember that game we used to play as young people? Old lady and O'Grady say. So anytime you're not sure what they're saying. So most of the time you're getting caught. You see?
And they change up the rules on you, so you're always gonna get caught.
All the time they keep changing the rules. You see? But you see the thing about oppression. You know, the other end of oppression is liberation, you know.
And liberation you have to fight for.
That's the thing. You have to fight for it.
Yeah.
So the space between oppression and liberation is where the journey is. And if we're not journeying, as Muwakil making this point all the time, and I'm not afraid to say that we get sweetened up with oil money. That's what happened. You see the oil money that come in the 70s and the 80s and so on. That makes me the kind of laid back, lazy, accepting everything kind of people that we are, you know. God is actually not so. You understand? And that's the attitude that we keep perpetuating all the time.
We take what we fight for granted. You know something I do, right? I work with young people. I work with a group called Tall Man. And it had some young brothers in there I work with. And I say, what you do for carnival? And they say, boy, we just hold rope and wind up on them white people, daughter and them. I said, well, not from now on, no more. Not once you wrong me. You understand?
Right.
Your grandfather, he wasn't holding rope. He was playing a bat or a rubber or something. And you think that your big deal now is to hold a rope?
Yes. You understand?
Come on, man.
But
For me,
I like what you say, Wendell, because as a director, you are also a teacher. And because you're working with young people in particular, that aspect of the directing is absolutely important. And the thing is, I always tell my people too, you have to come up to my standard and not coming down by you. If you can't come up to where I am, walk. You understand? So you set your standards.
And from the time you start to diminish the standards, the whole thing fall apart. Yeah?
Exactly.
Right. So they will find you kind of stupid and ignorant, but it's important that you come with that ignorance so the thing is perpetuated to the depths of it.
Sorry.
Before you go on, Abeo had a contribution to make.
No, where my thinking is right now is like these conversations are always really exciting and eye-opening, and I too, like Mohammed, I'm very, very cool to sit here and listen to Rhoma and Wendell and Victor. But in terms of us talking about things in vacuums, you know, we talk about what's going on within the theater industry, in terms of taking back our narrative. We talk about, Mr. Edwards has spoken about the disparities within education. Of course, within the context of theater and the performing arts, but still, we know that there are disparities where education is concerned. We could talk social reform. We could talk law enforcement. We could talk about the housing in marginalized communities that Mohammed would have spoken about. And my question is, how do we start to unpick that as artists in terms of what the root of that is, in terms of those colonial structures on which all of this is built, so that even if we talking about things in vacuums, it's never going to click, so to speak. As Wendell said, we will find it and lose it and find it and lose it unless we do the work of starting to unpick this from where it begins. Mr. Edwards spoke about the fact that we got lazy in the 1970s, but I think that whole idea of capitalism that would have taken over at that point in time, and I am of the firm belief that all of the isms stand on top of capitalism. Once we start to unpick capitalism, once we start to take away the power that people have and the disparities that are created by capitalism, then we could start to pick things at the root, you know. Then it becomes less, then we could take back the carnival from the West and send it back in the East, or then we can not encourage, but then it would become more natural for young people to start speaking in their own voices and reclaiming their narratives and telling their stories, because it would be natural, as opposed to feeling as though they need to aspire to something besides who we are. So for me, that's where the theater of resistance needs to go, in terms of what that is exactly, in terms of trying to figure out what form does that take and what role do we play.
So just want to reference something you said, that Victor said that in the 70s we got lazy. Is that what you said, Victor? However, I beg, because I
Beg to
feel,
differ.
because I feel that in 1970s, the 70s, we became very conscious.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a time when nobody was ashamed to say
that it was black and proud.
Yeah, and that I'm a Baptist, I'm a spiritual Baptist, or I follow the ways of the Orittas. You know, these are things that were hush hush and done behind closed doors, and you don't vocalize that. So to me, 70s was a powerful time that suffices to say now in
I think he meant it happened in the boom time, that boom period, that 80s boom.
When Eric Williams,
when the money was just flowing.
Yeah.
Money was just flowing.
But I want to also going back to the notion of a theater of the oppressed, and how the arts is used, and you know, for social reform. I couldn't help but to recall something that happened today, and she's looking up. That's Julia Cato, who is here with me, and she said that this morning she got a note saying to be X, Y, and Z. Be here at 7:30. Wear black. That's all the note says. And then later in the news, we see the reason. Thousands of black people, well, others too, took to the street of Bay and College, one of Bay and College, in front of the police, Toronto police headquarters, dressed in black, sit down on the road, kilometers, sat on the road, and also painted on the road, defund the police. Tell me if that is not an act of theater.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
That is not an act of resistance. Yeah, but my girl, she missed the opportunity because she didn't quite probably understand the memo. I know what, but that she got that memo, I would have until this morning. I had to wait till somebody sent me a picture and said, "Look what's going on the road," you know, and it is still happening. You know?
It's happening. It's happening all over. Look what's happening in Seattle right now. There's some serious theater of resistance taking place.
So the whole of what happened post Floyd's murder.
Yeah.
You know? I have a presentation I'm doing next Friday at the corner of my street, Shooter and Southville. I call it a Basdeo of the pavement. All right, where two artists tell a story. It's called parenting. It's happening. We have no pride happening. So what the theater, the biggest theater company in the world that exists here in Toronto, they put out a call saying, you know, you can celebrate Pride in place. You could do a performance on your balcony, on front of your yard, on the pavement. I chose to do something at I live at the corner house. On top of it, there's a lovely architectural, artistic monument, so we're going to animate that space with a piece of physical theater performance called Parenting. And when I wrote the outline for the performance piece, which I'm creating in collaboration with Julia Cato and Nikisha Garrett, George Floyd's death didn't happen, you know. So now that it has happened, and how George Floyd's death just came, if you notice that his death came and just overtake the COVID, because every day for the past since February, March, all you're dealing with is COVID news. And then George Floyd's murder happens, and then it's all about protest. So obviously, as a creator, as an artist, I bound to must put in that piece, the notion of Black Lives Matter and how it happens inside of this quarantine moment.
How it intersectionality. It's so important. We can't ignore it. You know,
we must be men of our time, men and women of our time, as Martin Carter say. I mean, and that's what, you know, you talk about taking the work out of the vacuum, because it comes with the courage of conviction to put yourself in it. The depth of your belief is what comes across in your work. You're not just doing the work as an idea or to legitimize yourself or to say, I am versed in, you know, Walker had a joke about classical and Creole acting, you know, and I think we get tied up with that. And I always say I'm very good at both. And I don't see one better than the other. As a matter of fact, I prefer to be a Creole actor than a classical actor. I prefer my folk roots. I prefer my Juve roots. I prefer that. But you have to come to that. You have to come around to that, because we are not conditioned to that. We're not geared towards that, especially if you go to a good school and you're light skin and all that kind of chippiness. People have to, like, you know, people tell you you're Indian, you have to come around and recognize that. You know, I read in our history. You have to read your history books and let that inform you, so that you could, when you open your mouth to talk, you're not talking in a vacuum, you know? And all you want to make,
Sorry, go ahead, Wendell.
All you want to say, you know, a man pulling off a policeman hat in a protest is bacchanal. That's nothing. That was nothing compared to what could have happened. You know what I mean?
Question. Sorry, go ahead.
All my life, right, Wendell, I was an avid reader. My grandfather subscribed to National Geographic from the time I was 3 years old. I was reading Dr. Seuss. I was reading Hardy Boys, all of that, Enid Blyton. Anything I get my hands on, I was reading. And you know, the first time I woke up to what the power of language could be, I walked into a literature class in Form 4, and I heard, "This is the dark time, my love."
Wow, Martin Carter.
I will never, as long as I live, forget that was the first time I realized what I could do with language. Language before that was a thing for me to look at from the outside and enjoy. So I would read Hardy Boys, I would read all these different things, but I knew very well that these were not. I mean, when they're talking about marzipan and all, like all kind of things that you can't even relate to.
And daffodils and things.
And you're like, okay.
I used to read Enid Blyton. I used to enjoy that, but then you realize, but that's not me. And then just like you, I discovered the more the men of our time we are, the more our time is. And just the rhythm of that alone.
I'm telling you, the first time, I will never forget it. I walked in and Mr. Perkins picked up the book, he opened it, and he said, "This is the dark time, my love." And I was like, what is this? What this man is talking about? And not only did it give me the language, it also gave me simultaneously the history as well, because I didn't know about Guyana and what was going on. You know, I didn't know the connection. And then when I found out about Guyana, I began to read about the rest of revolution in the rest of the Caribbean. because of that door that took me through there, you know. And I think that is primary role in many ways of the artist to kind of awaken wonder, but not just awaken it and just have it anywhere, but awaken wonder for yourself. Like, you know, I am a wonderful thing. I am a thing to be wondered about. You know what I mean?
Today's Labor Day. Yeah,
Yeah.
the holiday. And again, ultimate act of theater, Charlie King's murder. You know, the narrative that Butler made to the masses as the police comes to arrest him, and how his narrative was an agitating factor to Lego that scene or whatever they threw on the man and set him afire. That is a
and that's the thing, I think at this point in time, artists in general, I think we have a leadership role at this point in time. There's a power that we have. We have to understand our energy as well. Energy is a very serious thing in terms of being able to affect and effect people and change around us by what we do and when we choose to do it and how we choose to do it, and being very aware of who stands with you while you do it. I think there's a huge importance with that. But I also think that we in again an exciting time. We standing at the brink of something. We're just not exactly sure what it is yet and what form it's going to take. But I think there is an inevitability that something is coming and that artists are going to lead it here in Trinidad and Tobago.
Absolutely. I was watching an interview with Marlon James speaking about Bob Marley recently.
Hey, you!
And he said, you know, Bob Marley was a very dangerous fella. So, you know, he was not taken on board by the average Jamaican until the world, you know, took him on board. You know, and listening to a lot of Marley recently, and there was a line that jumped out in his song called Revolution. He said, "Never let a politician grant you a favor." I was like, wow. Yeah, because you see, that whole idea of being appropriated, the whole idea of you know, being sort of like co-opted and channeled in certain directions, and because you could get through, I see Janine Charles Farray has a term that we have a get-through culture. And once we get through, we'll be good. And then everybody else had a fight up for this.
People feel like Bob was one love, you know. Bob have a line in a song. Bob said,
he's a tough gun boy.
Now I feel like bombing
in a church.
That you know that the preacher is lying. Bob could sing that today and I'm going to airport. You don't got me if I say I feel like bombing at church.
When he said we'd been trodden on the wine press much too long, rebel. Tell the children the truth. You know, people need to connect to the power of their voice, to the power of their stories, to the power of the forces running through this space. You see this little island, this Irie land, this Kyrie, whatever you want to call it.
Hey, you
know, we need to reconnect to them energies, them forces. You know, we talk about pound for pound, we punch way above our weight. I see LR James impact the world, George Padmore impact the world. You know, Stokely Carmichael is the man who give them Black Power. Malcolm X used to sing Calypso. Maya Angelou used to sing Calypso.
Nina Simone used to lime in Trinidad.
I bounced up Nina Simone on top of a truck in a Menchel band one year. I didn't know that's Nina Simone, you know. I was a little boy in the band. Like, who's this lady? But she was having a time. I was like, wow, that was Nina Simone. One of the most powerful voices ever. A radical. You know, no, come on.
Sorry, Rhoma, go ahead.
I said her song is so powerful now to be young, gifted, and black.
I want to highlight two things. Giving the light of the direction of discussion, there's a question up on the screen there. So then, is it safe to say the art of theater and the act of theater is definitely different? Yeah. And that whole idea of act and art, considering the
I think it's both. I think it's both. I could be wrong, but I think it's both. I think the act of it, of enacting something, of taking energy and turning it into something that could affect change.
Exactly. Yeah.
That in itself is art. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That in itself is a work of art. That might sound idealistic and very fluffy, but that's how I feel about it.
No, it is a craft. It's a discipline. So you have to be able to master the forms and to be effective, to be impactful. Otherwise, anybody will jump up. You see, like how anyone could just go online and say whatever they want now. That's a big problem as far as I'm concerned, because half of them trippiness people saying it's just trippiness. Right?
I want to think that the art of theater is the form that you take to present the act.
Yeah.
So the act
and you must have competencies. You must have, be able to voice and
all
body
that good stuff.
and
Yes.
Go on social media and talk.
Yeah, just
There's
talk.
no way.
I watched two fellas having a live the other day. Like, Jesus Christ, I lost a couple of brain cells attempting to try and figure out what the conversation was about. Is my partner?
But I want to make a point here about the art and the act. And it's Stanislavski who said that you have to love the art in yourself and not yourself in the art. There's a big difference, you see? So the art and the act, whereas the way Rhoma is saying it, the way Wendell is explaining, they can intersect. But sometimes you have to understand that there are people who might be acting who don't have the art themselves.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
And one of the earliest books I ever read was a book by Utagan called Respect for Acting. And that whole sense of, there are forms and traditions that predate us and will endure beyond us. And we have to be respectful. We have to be respectful in all regards, so you don't just
Lalon and them, about reading Aristotle's Poetics and so on while they were UV.
I was now going to ask a question, and I'm going to just jump in here. So, for those who don't know, I have no formal training in theater. I play fast, I wash my foot, and I jump in, right? So, my experience with the theater is very practical. So,
no, well, you see, if you have to learn on the job. You learn on the job.
Right. Exactly. So my question refers to what is being taught on the academic level in secondary schools as well as universities. So maybe something that Victor Edwards and Muhammad Muwakil could engage. Is the act of theater being taught alongside the art of theater in the secondary schools or the tertiary university level?
I could weigh in a bit, I guess, as well.
Right.
I would like to just add to that, give a bit of experience. Really, is that let's probably put art of theater here and act of theater here.
Okay,
all right. So, yeah, art and act, right? I believe in the formal education, we learn a lot about the art, the poetics, the rules, etc. But the act is not so much. I won't say encourage, but my acting theater, especially in terms of resistance, happened next to learning about the art and working with Mount Door and doing Best Village and taping up my mouth and standing up with a boy in front of a car and blocking the road to get what we have now, the Creative Arts Center, with some air conditioning and thing and no rat running under you. So, and that was, we didn't, okay, so you put a cross across your lip and then you hold a ball like this. That wasn't a class.
We know how to make grabs, boy.
That's called practice.
So we
understand? Yeah, practice. You learn from practice. You learn from doing. You learn because it have a reason to go out there and hold your bar and tape your mouth. And that's the best way to learn. You could study all the book, but if you don't have the opportunity to put it into practice, what's the point of it all?
And that is the act of theater, really, what you did.
Yeah. And you have the best of both worlds there, you do. A lot of young people say, but I wasn't taught this and I wasn't taught that. You were. You just didn't realize that you were. You know what I mean? Because you're expecting it in a form that is formalized or whatever.
Correct.
Many times you just have to jump in and do it, and they realize, oh shit, I was doing that.
The way the CAPE and the C6 syllabus is organized, if it is well taught, the art and the act, will become, synonymous for the students who are experiencing them. But look, I think that's better say very little about the CSEC and the CAPE thing because I might just because there's so many things happened there. While I was at curriculum, while I was working with CAPE, while I was working with CXT and so on, is really frightening and depressing to talk about. Really, you know what I mean? So let me expatiate too much on that, please.
Why
But there's a lot to be. There's a lot to be accomplished still. I think too many shortcuts are being applied in the teaching learning institutions, with the theater arts and so on. And I don't know. Lalon could talk because he teaching theater arts thing, so.
Well, I mean, it becomes problematic immediately if you're trying to verify something such as somebody's learning within theater and acting and whatever, and you have to verify that via an exam system within a very specific amount of time. I mean, what's your intention? Are you intending to use the theater to create an individual who can be useful to society via their art, or are you just trying to create somebody who knows some things about theater and that?
That's part of the objective,
of UE.
That's part of the objective,
This goes back to our thing of saying in terms of restructuring, dismantling various systems in terms of the way we approach education here in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, there's that discussion that we can have, but I think there's a part of it it goes back to what Mohammed was saying earlier about being able to imagine more for yourself and giving young people permission to imagine more and see more as in fact artists in general, creatives in general, that permission. You spoke about Stanislavski, but then too you have Chekhov, who has a whole practice that's based on imagination. It stands on the shoulders of Stanislavski, but that idea of using your imagination and seeing more for yourself. And I think that might be the next step in terms of making the differentiation between just the art and then turning it into the act in of itself,
And well, before we lose the opportunity and time's run out on us, there's a pressing matter, issue, whatever word you want to use, and we're talking about we mentioned earlier about colonial figures and dismantling and restructuring, and there's a hot topic again on social media in general conversation about the literal colonial figures. In one example, the Christopher Columbus statue, and you have those that want it removed, point blank, and the reasons to back that up, and those that find it shouldn't be removed. It's our history, and then the kind of in-betweens that find removing it doing nothing. So what we could do, I want us to just engage that conversation a bit, sharing our views and where we think we could go with that.
Comfort is inertia, Judd. Comfort is inertia, and inertia is death for human beings. So you get to a point, like I was talking before, you're not dreaming another world for yourself. You're just not doing it. Because there's a level of comfort you can achieve within the world you've been given. So you tell yourself, it's enough. It's enough. It's enough. My son go how to make you way. And then when he work hard for his whole life, his son go how to make you way because there's no wealth to be gained within the communities, right? So we never think about we think about them as little things. So a statue of a mass murderer in your capital, Port of Spain, and streets that you walk through every day and speak the names of mass murderers who kill your ancestors, them thing is small thing. Because at the end of the day, and I join my pay at the end of the month, and the government working, and my car working, and my fridge working, and I getting food and whatever. And literally you're just caught in this cycle of survival that you're calling living. But even hearing somebody like me saying that out loud, somebody will still be like, what kind of stupidness this man talking? Because we good. And we couldn't. We good. I not dying. It has some black boys and thing here, they just kill each other and whatever, and they just sing some zesting song and whatever, but that's life. We go drink a 2 carib and we go wind down for carnival. We good. We good. But if we could sit down and dream an island where nobody didn't die this year. Nobody didn't die for the whole year. No woman didn't get abused. Nobody didn't get fined in the river. Nobody didn't get robbed in the street. And the children are calling the names of glorified ancestors when they say the streets we drive in down Haile Selassie Boulevard. You know what I mean? There's a map in Eric Williams Square of the old city with the old names and all that. Things we could be proud of now. And these things begin to change just at the root, at the word sound of who we are. But that's another level of thinking. But if you're comfortable, well,
several times you've used the idea of dreaming and our inability to dream. And, we did that jump program a couple of years ago, Mohammed.
Yes,
and
sir.
I started off with a quote that I love to use. And it's a quote that comes from the Caribbean Commission on Youth that was done in 2012. It says, Caribbean youth dream of being the best that they can be, but their dreams and aspirations are located outside of the region because they're afraid that it cannot be realized here. And when I read that, that shook me to the core. And I went with a partner of mine. We went to a Roy Tech class one day. And the question was, do you have a dream? And only a few people, if there were 30 people in the class, maybe 3 people put up their hand at the idea of having a dream. And it's a very frightening thing when the young people in the community don't have the ability to dream, much less the older people. The idea of Columbus and the removal of Columbus statue and all that, as I said, we explored IERE last year with our Lilliput children. We came to understand and appreciate how much Amerindian retention we had here because we were the last of the islands to be colonized in that sense. Even in Woodbrook where I am now, Ariapita is Amerindian word, Tragreet is Amerindian word, Mokorapo, So the power to imagine or to dream has to be contingent on something, on knowledge of self, on an understanding that, there is something deeper at play. The idea that frightens a lot of people when it comes to the Columbus statues, and then what? So we go change the coat of arms and we go change. Maybe we might have to do all those things.
All.
I remember hearing somebody complain about the changing of the name of King George V Park to Nelson Mandela Park. They was mad vexed because they find King George was a good enough name. And I said, but that was an African burial ground. Like they business with that. King George V, they just grew up with that. They're accustomed to that. Why you want to come and upset the whole order?
Inertia.
They know business that Woodford was a racist and Picton was a sadist. They know business. They don't know. They don't care. As you say, they live in. They could drink a beer. They could wine. They could jam. They could sing 2-3 songs.
You vexed
So we have real work to do in even being able to imagine the kind of space you want to be in, We have a tribal politics at play for the longest while, and we need to imagine our way out of that.
Out of it.
Because it don't have to be so. It don't have to be so. Them fellas ain't really checking for you, and all who feel that they're voting for the African party, check that party and look at it. Good. And all who feel they're voting for the Indian party, to what end? It's just a trap.
Campaign finance reform. I keep
We need
saying
to
it.
imagination and dreaming is very crucial, very critical. But where is that being engendered? Which brings us back to Victor, the school curriculum and how we teach people. What are we teaching people? What are we educating people towards? This is the 50th anniversary of Black Power in Trinidad and Tobago, and it hit me. We had Black Power, but we don't have Black empowerment. And if we had Black empowerment, and by Black empowerment, I mean everybody who's not remotely white, we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in today and fighting up this stupid little fight, and everybody feel that they have a little something and they're better than the next one, and they have access to this and they have access to that. And the purveyors of that culture understand the socio-psychological fault lines that operate in the society, and they prey on it, and they make themselves millionaires as a consequence of it. And the people who doing the work, trying their best to put themselves on the line, is salt, nothing for you and you like it. Frustration is the order of the day. Right? When you talk about how do we treat our greats, how do we treat our dreamers, the grandmaster, and fellas like that, people who invent whole forms of music, how we treat them down to their last days, eh? They're not celebrated like the old bluesmen. Everybody's still fighting up for some dignity in this space. And that's crucial. That's wrong. You need to stop, I say. You need to stop. I don't talk.
Well, Warren Man pretty much say all of it, you know. You know? I mean, for me...
Go ahead, Victor.
Go ahead, Victor.
I was going to say that I remember one time Leroy Clark saying to us that if we want to see, you know, how much we really care about our ancestors, to visit a graveyard.
Oh God, I say that all the time.
You know what I mean? The condition of it tells us what kind of respect we have for our own ancestors. And the Christopher Columbus statue thing, I say take it down. But I'm also saying, I think I learned from Joseph Burnings who said Christopher Columbus was a damn blasted liar.
Sure
and then Shadow say Columbus lied. I will walk up and down Independence Avenue 100 times and not see that statue there.
And Muchabaru Columbus.
Or if I see it, it is meaningless. It means nothing to me in terms of, you know, him being this, whatever they say he was. Because I'm enlightened in terms of the information and so on and so on. So I understand, and we did that play for the First People's Rhoma sometime in 2017 or somewhere around there. And that brought us even closer into understanding the workings and so on. But if we want to pay homage to a man who really did all these atrocities to our ancestors and so on, and keep him on display, I don't know. I don't think we should, and I think we should really replace that with something that is more edifying, but not just a statue, as some people say. We have to move into the technology where if you put up a statue of one of our own, you must have a video thing and a thing you could put 25 cents or 50 cents or whatever it is, and you could hear and you could learn. You know what I mean? Not just to say, well, I wonder who this is, boy. You know, you looking like this, that's Sparrow, that's Kitchener. You understand the point? So the thing must be a teaching tool in itself. But with that statue, I say, well, all the time, I don't see it. But because of what it represents, it should come down.
So I think there are some people who are like you, who are fortunate enough to be enlightened enough that it doesn't play into your field of vision, whether literally or figuratively. But in terms of generations coming, and in terms of how we teach our history, there are many people who are quite confused in terms of the roles, or if not confused, are not aware of how much of a genocidal maniac, murderer, rapist, plunderer Columbus was. Let's not front. And these statues and these street names and these emblems that venerate our colonial legacies, it's like the last physical vestiges of what it is. And the fact that we have foreign entities who are guests on our soil, who feel as though they have the right to interject in the conversation, while we as sovereign people have a conversation about how we deal with this legacy that has been left behind. It just proves to you that those statues are more about silent, white supremacist, racist dog whistling than anything else, and it needs to come down. It's as simple as that.
Expression still.
And this is our discussion to have. It's our discussion. It's
exactly. Mind your business.
If we argue from now till, that's what's going on. That's how we forge our society.
That's right.
Rhoma, what are your thoughts on the matter?
No, I'm just I'm lost because is it that people back home are saying that it shouldn't come down there sufficient for people to-
Yeah,
Rhoma is confused.
I
She's
am just
confused.
as lost and confused as you, Rhoma, because
Yes,
we had a
girl.
meeting. We had to have a meeting with the mayor to talk about
Mm-hmm.
whether or not, and he
Columbus
said
Square?
he have to consult with, and I'm thinking to
Well,
myself,
you know,
what
Mohammed, that's the
consult?
problem. Why you went and had a meeting? Lord Harris disappeared a couple years ago, you know. Lord Harris
remember
statue
that.
just disappeared. Vaps like that.
I was invited to a meeting.
I had a meeting with the said mayor about it. And I said, you know,
Time ago.
in my research, we find out that Lord Harris Square was the first guile in town. So with all due respect, sir, I will recommend that we turn this into some kind of ceremonial guile where we could come and spar with arts and words and culture or something. Imagine, dream, right?
Aye.
Somebody just pick up Lord Harris and went with him. I mean, what they waiting on Columbus for? In America, they chop off his head the other day, and then they find the next Columbus in a river. What we waiting on? What kind of revolution?
Exactly.
That's why I like the Warahoo Queen. She say you have 7 days.
Thank you. And as American woman, as American descendants, I make the pledge to stand with her as a woman when she come with the sledgehammer.
And I'm there too.
Yeah, man, 7 days.
But
7 days. We need to stop asking permission. We need to stop. I told somebody recently that I have gotten to the point where I am not arguing anymore. I'm not justifying my humanity to anybody. I'm not justifying my worth. People understand, you know. They know what we mean when we say Black Lives Matter. They know what we mean when we say diasporic solidarity. They know what we mean when we start to talk about social reform in marginalized communities. They know.
But that's why they're scared, you see. It's very scary.
They choose to conflate. It's about draining your energy. So if they drain your energy because you have to keep explaining and everybody's shouting at each other on social media, then you're too tired to actually do the work that you need to do. So I'm no longer about asking permission, you know. So if the Warahoo Queen says they have 7 days, I feel like they have 7 days, and that's that on that.
To give another perspective, I came across an article. Is my mic on? Yes.
Yes.
I came across an article in the Express. It's either yesterday or today. And let me just read a piece of that article. A guy whose name is, no, I can't find it. But the article says, the local government body has no authority over the statue in Moruga in reference to the Columbus statue in Moruga. It went on to say, first of all, the regional corporation would not be able to make that decision. They have no power over it. It does not belong to the regional corporation. It only became public property when the monument was erected. The property was donated for the community to have the Columbus Monument and Columbus-based activity, one of Moruga's largest festivals over 60 years. And then it went on to say, sorry, just wait, real long article.
somebody go hurt their feelings real bad just now.
I'm still scrolling, hold on. Right.
You're still scrolling.
There needs to be a petition. Let's say you have a petition with about 5,000 names from Moruga. I will consider having a meeting with the council community groups, and others to take a decision. It cannot be an autocratic decision.
Well, the Moruga statue, as far as I know, Moruga is a special case compared to the one in Tong, right?
Exactly.
Because for some reason, this gentleman and the people of Moruga are particularly enamored of the fact that Columbus set foot there. I don't even know if he came off the ship. And they are the only people that still consider.
No, he didn't.
As far as I understand, he didn't. But they still, it's part of their law that, you know, Columbus touched down there, and they have Columbus Day, Discovery Day still, right? They're the only people that still celebrate Discovery Day.
No,
so they're a bit of an anomaly.
Actually, Wendell, I was there in March, and my first visit, and I asked that question to this guy who is called the Prince of Moruga.
Right.
Eric Lewis.
Right. Yeah. I said, do you all still celebrate Discovery Day and have Discovery celebrations? And he said they don't call it Discovery Day anymore.
What do they call it?
Something like Heritage some Heritage Day. So it's all about the First Peoples, the Americans, everybody coming together to celebrate this day. So they don't have the Heritage Day thing. But
I think the major discussion was about the one in Tong, right? I mean, that's their heritage.
Yeah.
I mean, Karanaj have St. Peter's Day. Everywhere have the day. That's a more nuanced discussion. We don't want to go and
we're talking about this statue in the middle of Port of Spain.
So are you all saying a sufficient amount of people in Trinidad who is saying that Columbus statue must be in Columbus Square in Port of Spain?
Yes,
the politicians is an election year, and they are afraid to upset anyone at all. That's what's going on. They don't want to upset anybody. Like not even a vagrant in Port of Spain, they want to upset. So
and this is the thing about energies too. If it is we understand, we can't be theater practitioners and not understand energy. So if it is we understand energy, then we must understand what we're manifesting in the middle of tongue by leaving that statue up. What we've been manifesting. You know what I mean? Is that the kind of energy that we want in the middle of tongue in perpetuity, like just forever and ever and ever? Like we okay with? I can't see how we could be okay with that. And the people who are okay with it, they're wrong.
I want to put out something here to my theater colleagues back home. You gotta see yourself as activists.
Aye.
Okay? You have the right to mobilize and all you go down there at Columbus Square with rope and pickaxe and what it takes to take it the hell down.
But I was a little bit like Victor with the Columbus statue the other day until the Spanish man opened him out. Because honestly, he was really out of context, very out of place.
Who is this?
Very out of place.
Mayor?
The
Spanish ambassador, Javier Carabosa, or whatever his name is.
The Venezuelan ambassador?
No,
Spanish. Spain. Yeah.
What he mounted that?
I don't know.
What he mounted that?
We have never heard him before.
Exactly.
We have never heard him before.
I didn't even know we have a Spanish ambassador.
I didn't even know we did business with Spain.
But he was sure to remind us in a very timely and deliberate manner that we have good relations with each other, good diplomatic relations with each other. He was sure to remind us of that. Good diplomatic relations.
And
you know what I mean?
You know what that is? That's coercion, eh? You understand? Sending a subliminal message. That's what they do. That's what these oppressors do all the time. You think the mayor don't know that the statue have to come down? But he had to play the game. He had to show you that he had power. And he must go and do this before he come back and give you a decision. And that is the place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But,
ladies and gentlemen,
you're right. In Sundar, we have a line that says, "You just spelt clear bottles in the day and dark bottles in the night." You understand? You had to know your time. You had to know your time.
What like that?
Ladies and gentlemen, let me just
ask when they will see you.
Big conversation. I am so sorry. We are running out of time. This is a very good conversation, and we would like it's 2 hours. Yeah, Abeo and Wendell Manwarren was supposed to leave at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, we remember. We was leaving, but then we changed our mind.
Yeah, this is good.
I forget the time. Wow. I was leaving to watch Free Tongue show.
Watch Tongue show on Free
Tongue show on TV. You know that, Mama?
Yeah.
Anyway, so we
I feel like the lead singer of Free Tongue should know that Free Tongue have a show.
I mean, we have to sing a few songs in it, so I was wanted to see me, but the talk was too good. Not to tell you how good the talk was.
Yeah, man.
We will definitely have part 2, and we will invite you all on to contribute again.
Could I just make one more point? The point about it, we haven't we didn't even mention about resolution? I mean, where do we go from here?
After resistance, definitely. And we believe we don't wanna mull it over. I think we should save it for the part two. I hope that you guys are interested in that. We definitely will organize that. For the viewing public who may have seen the trailer, at the beginning we had Dr. Basdeo Panday with us, but he experienced some
technical difficulties
and
he could not join us for the rest
we
of the
tried to have
conversation.
him rejoin the conversation, but that didn't work out. You see, for all this time. So hopefully in part two we can get that perspective from the actor
to the
union leader, politics prime minister. You understand? And maybe that would be probably more applicable in that what comes after resistance conversation.
Yeah.
We just want
to encourage theater and politics inseparable. Eh?
What's that?
They say that theater and politics, that they are inseparable.
And he was the master of theatrics and politics. So
Silver Fox. You never forget that famous line, I can't answer you now, Boogsy's playing.
Wake up when it's over.
Before we close off, just want to ask one final question. It's very short.
It's a question of the day.
The question of the day is, as we're talking about theater of resistance, can you name any particular production that you would have been involved in or would have seen that falls within the realm of theater of resistance?
Arts and Action in Trinidad.
Hey!
Continue theater of resistance all the time.
Okay.
Rhoma!
Win. So I was fortunate enough to have seen some of their early work. I even participated very, very early. I remember, in its beginning stages, working with Danny Lindesay. So that was the first time I was allowed the opportunity to work in not only theater of resistance and theater of expression, sort of thing, but popular theater, right? So, Tony Hall, what are you laughing at?
Julia
I was because Normandy, you know.
I have the phone volume down, and I don't understand why I called him in. But probably I was
timing.
It was suspicious with switch as well. Phone volume down, it's off, so it's not disturbed. So I don't know how they asked that phone call happened. Anyhow, Arts in Action has been one of the companies that has continued to do that kind of work in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean. They've done travel doing it. And in the earlies, I had the opportunity to work with Danny Lindesay in it. And also the work that Tony Hall did. He was actually my popular theater teacher at UWI Creative Arts Center. So early up in the game, I have been a bit. I continue to do it. Not enough, but it always still comes. It is always part of the trajectory of the work that I do as an artist. Yeah.
Yeah. Victor, you were going to say something?
No, I was saying that I was part of Tony Hall's Juvie initiative. And I remember doing that Juvie in under the trees in Normandy many, many years ago. And it was a real eye-opening experience for me as well. That was back in the 80s and so on, long time ago. But as if there's a play that I want to identify that I was involved in, that I feel has different levels of resistance and so on, is Death and the King's Horseman by Shoinka. Mm-hmm. That year that the DCFA put that play on in the 90s or so. Back in the 1990s. I think that was a tremendous play on different levels against the colonials, against the Africans, and even the Africans fighting against some of their own ancestral beliefs and so on and so on. I thought it was very enlightening as well.
Thank you, Victor. Abeo, can you add?
I've been fortunate to work with Best Village as well as UE Arts in Action when Camille and Marvin and they were still here. Did some really good work with them. But for me, right now, literally every single thing we do coming out of the Big Black Box crew, Tricanal, I saying it in big. Every single thing that we do coming out of the Black Box is Theatre of the Resistance. I have seen the box save lives, literally. I've seen the box pull people back from the brink. The box saved me on many an occasion. I've seen it give voice to people who were terrified of their own voices and didn't know that they had a voice. And this is not just the Tricanal show, which is a undertaking in itself, but this is, like I said, every single thing that we do coming out of the box, the movements, the privilege to be one of the choreographers and working with Wendell and my usual style of choreography, and then Wendell as director saying, no, strip it back. Make it say what it needs to say, because it's not just supposed to be pretty and about technique, and you know what I mean? So that understanding of what resistance really means right now in a current context that is youthful and timely and present, for me, is the Big Black Box.
Mohammed?
When we did March to Caroni, Draw Gibbons in 2010, I believe it was, there were, apart from the play itself being so interactive, right, where the audience literally had to get up out of the theater to walk the march and go over by Dagger Hall and like the entire audience. I've never seen anything like that before or after. The whole audience was just a part of it. But in the end of the play, there were these testimonies where people from the audience were invited to speak. And I remember one man standing up and he was dressed in kind of almost military fatigues. And apparently he was a member of NUF. And he gave his accounts, you know. And for me, that was just such a real moment, because here we were enacting something. And here was this man who was, you know, right there, you know, who almost lost his life, who saw other people lose their lives, and giving his account, you know. And my father was also there. My father was in the coup, and it was the first time I ever heard my father stand up in public and talk about his experience as a man who was 34 years old at the time when the coup happened, about being in the coup, you know. So that was my experience of that.
Finally, throwing it over to Wendell Manwarren.
Well, I consider myself really blessed to have cut my teeth in the Trinidad Tent Theatre and to work among some of the best, you know, at that time. And everybody in that crew then went on to do something significant in local theatre. And I was a youngling, didn't know nothing. The idea of learning so much about our calypso tradition and our carnival tradition, and just working with people closely and sharing closely. And for me, what we have now with the Big Black Box is a testament to that. And you know, one of the favorite things I've done, one of the most powerful pieces of work that we've done was the black jab in the Black Box, where we knew we couldn't go in Queen's Hall and paint up everybody black, and you know, and we had our own space. We could do that. And one of the other things I was most proud of was that Big Love Party, where every week for 5 or 6 weeks,
created a new show.
You know, and we would write the show on the weekend and rehearse it for a couple of days and put it on every Friday, and that audience just built and built and built. And it was so immediate and so irreverent and so political and so in your face and downright dirty and beautiful. And I love the Black Box crew. I love the fact that we have a space that we could do that kind of work. I remember when Rhoma came with Medea and did it in the yard itself. I love to walk in the box and just see what's going on. And half the time it has nothing to do with us. People come in the space and use the space, and it's a joy. It's a joy. It has saved not just other people's lives, it has saved our life time and again. And it's really painful to go down there these days because with the COVID and everything else. Yeah. One day. Soon. Yeah.
Just one more thing, and when you reminded me of it, of when I did in 1992 a play inside Stallmeyer's Castle.
Yes.
With the fallen angel of the
Devil's concubine, yeah.
And Danny Lindsay. Right, the play has to do about these two women, a black woman and a white woman, fighting over an abandoned house that they overtake, and the white woman seeing me as the maid, and anyhow, and it was important to me then to do the play in Stallmeyer's Castle, which was a dilapidated.
It was falling down.
Going down.
Yeah.
Just there, and it's only when I come out here to do a master's degree in theater, then I hear about something called site
specific, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's like when we got in the Caribbean, when we went in the Caribbean was falling down to do the Chicken show, the first Chicken show. They just let we have it for as long as we wanted, and it was like, okay. I mean, we pay a little rent, I remember walking around and picking up thing, and I pick up a desiccated rat. It was a dead, dry out rat. It's like, geez, nobody wants to use the Carib. And I always say that our going in there forced them to rebuild the Carib. And it was necessary to rebuild the Carib, because it was one of them treasures that we would have just thrown in the dustbin because it old.
And in the early days of my time at Creative Arts Center too, they were also doing site-specific theater work because we did plays in Panyards. Right? Black Jacobins.
I saw Black Jacobins in Curab Shazando Yard.
I saw Ogunayan in the
I was in Ogunayan, yeah.
I did Blacks by Jean inside Express Panyard.
All right.
Anyhow, we could go on.
To probably make a contribution, I would recall a couple works while at NTAC from Mustafa Mohammed, Playmas from Mustafa and Victor Catel's Two Choices. Some vagrants talking about the political structure and bringing it to that, But my choice for this to throw into the hat here would be 50-25. A simple play done at Best Village 2013, I believe, with Mondo Cultural Performers, directed by Camille Comina.
Yes.
Marvin George. And my teachers. And for me, that was probably the most iconic piece of work I did at that time that really cuffed me in my chest, boy. And if something could have slapped you and turned it on mirror so you see yourself, it was that, and open up my mind to search and go find things about me. In addition to learning a lot about history and the artist's position in resistance and reform. And with that,
I find something I was thinking about. Yeah, well, so I often say that I'm only now learning about our Caribbean theater. My introduction to theater was through American musical theater, and I'm now remembering that through the Marionette Chorale, we did excerpts from Ragtime. Ragtime is very similar to what is going on in America right now, where a black man was being charged to pass through an area where they have no right to charge him, and he's like, no, I'm not moving, and it was a whole bacchanal that happened, right? And singing the music and have Till We Reach That Day, that is the most watchman. When the Black Power movement started happening around the world, Till We Reach That Day is my anthem. And now hearing everybody talk about it, it's like, yeah, that was it. And another point is that a production, but I just remembered that the founding of the Trinidad and Tobago Performing Arts Network was an act of resistance. Resistance to the idea that you need to get a normal job. that you can't have a career in the art. And I was just, rebellious. I'm like, now we're creating market, I'll create something.
Do the damn thing.
Yeah, do the thing. So with that brings us to the end of our program. I would love to thank our panelists, Abeo Jackson, Wendell Manwarren, Mohammed Muwakil, Rhoma Spencer, Victor Edwards, and even though he didn't join us for the entire program, Dr. the Honorable Basdeo Panday. Everyone,
he's not up there.
And I am reminded when I saw the thousands of people sitting down on the road, socially distant, if you please. I was reminded of Hulsi Bagan when she did sit down on the highway.
I'm not moving.
I'm not moving. Outro music.
He's having like a
Right. So I'm encouraging everyone to like, share, and subscribe to SOCA TV, as well as the Trinidad and Tobago Performing Arts Network. SOCA TV right now is the home of culture. Everybody, thank you and good night.
Get them, boy.
Good night and God bless.